Welcome to another daily cinephile vlog. Well, the weekend we've all been waiting for finally came. The biggest weekend in movies for the year of 2023. It's Barbienheimer, the unofficial double feature that seemingly puts two movies that don't have anything in common for two completely different audiences, and everybody took it upon themselves to turn it into a meme. Let's go see Barbie, and then let's go see the polar opposite, Oppenheimer. I did see both movies the same night. I maybe wouldn't have done that given that Oppenheimer is a lot longer, but one, I wanted to join in on the trend, but two, I have to see these movies pretty quickly nowadays. You never know when something's going to be taken out of theaters because The Flash was only out for what seemed like a couple of weeks. Joyride seemed like it was only out for about 2 weeks. Both of those movies were fine enough. I actually really liked The Flash. Joyride was funny enough. And it seems like both of them went extremely fast. Barbie was going to be a big hit no matter what, but Oppenheimer, given that it's an R-rated 3-hour movie that is a historical drama with a lot of talking scenes, doesn't seem like the type of movie that's going to be in theaters for a long time, except for the fact that it does have Christopher Nolan's name attached to it. So I still wanted to see the movie the night it came out because who knows how long it'll even be in theaters. You're not really getting much of a chance to see these movies. Even Mission Impossible, great movie, my favorite movie of the year, isn't making a ton of money. It's making okay money, but it's already been booted down to the fourth place position for this past weekend. You know, box office numbers aren't everything, but if you want to see a movie in theaters, it has to do well and stay in theaters and give everyone a chance to actually see it. Right now, it's pretty tricky because, in my head, you got 3 huge blockbusters that are all well-received by critics, well-received by audiences, and, to me, some of the best movies to come out this year, but they're all out right now, and 2 of them are nearly 3 hours long. One of them is 3 hours long. Overall, I wouldn't recommend the Barbenheimer double feature. I know it was a lot of fun. It's kind of a meme, and in a way, though, I don't know if I would recommend it because Oppenheimer's so long. But I'm going to try to talk about my experience with the 2 movies. So let's start with Barbie. I watched Barbie at 7 o'clock at my local theater with quite a few people. And even for Friday night, there were tons of people dressing up in pink. The movie was still selling out. This is the type of movie that I don't see sell out often. It's usually only the Marvel movies that do this. But even the sneak preview they did a few nights before the night it came out, I think it came out as a sneak preview on Wednesday, that sold out completely in the bigger theater. Like the bigger theater with the bigger screen, the screen that not a lot of people are a fan of, and it has way more seats, that sold out. So that's how big of a deal this movie was. And even by Friday, people were still dressing up in pink. People were still clamoring to see this movie. I had a lot of fun with Barbie. It's a very funny movie. To me, easily, it's the funniest movie of the year. It utilizes its cast very well. Margot Robbie, she brings the right amount of emotion to the role, but also the right kind of comedy. It's a lot to do with the expressions and the way that she plays around with the somewhat corny dialogue. It's not an easy thing to pull off because it's not necessarily that she's telling jokes throughout, but it's just playing around with the environment that they live in, very much reinterpreting what Barbie Land would be like if humans were playing with it, but you actually don't see the humans, and then seeing her enter the real world and her response to it. So a lot of humor and the emotion ride on that, and she does it well. Ryan Gosling is terrific in the role. He is a very funny actor, and he unfortunately doesn't get a whole lot of comedies. The Nice Guys, to me, is his best performance. I think that's the best he's ever been. He's very funny in that movie, but unfortunately, he never gets too many comedies like that. Barbie is another chance for him to really shine. I especially love when he goes to the real world and he realizes the kind of power men have in the real world compared to Barbie Land. And there's a lot of just stereotypical jokes that flood through. I mean, there's a gym that has just Rocky posters all over. He becomes obsessed with horses. He basically becomes just a 12-year-old boy in that moment, but it's very funny. He plays it up, and again, it's that type of humor where it's not like he's telling a lot of jokes, it's more just playing with the dialogue that he's given, and giving it that humorous effect. And if you don't have the right actors, a lot of the humor maybe won't land. And especially this type of movie, because it's not like it goes too hard. It is still a movie that I think kids could go see, but it seems more like what they would have done in the 2000s. Like, it reminded me of something like Scooby-Doo or some of those other IP type of live action movies that came out in the early 2000s. Except here, it wasn't so secret with some of the adult humor that they had. It was very out there. And it all references the product of Barbie and the way that people remember it. The only one that's really given jokes is Will Ferrell, and sometimes you can tell that he was clearly ad-libbing some scenes, but he does get some of the best moments. Granted, he's not in the movie too much, and I would almost argue that maybe his character shouldn't have been in the movie at all, but still, he is the only one that is really given jokes, but they all, I think, are effective. The movie's production design is exquisite. I mean, it's incredible to see some of the sets that they built. A lot of this looks real, at least. I'm sure it is real from the behind-the-scenes footage. It looks like it was all real, but I just appreciate that I'm able to see a movie where everything constructed in the backgrounds and with the little details. It looks like the Barbie land that people will remember when they were kids. My sister was invested in Barbies. She played with them, so of course I saw them. I think she had the camper van. Watching this movie and seeing the way that they recreated that, but with live action, human actors, so built everything to scale. Really wonderful to look at, and the color tones especially are just, they take me back in a way, because like I said, it really does remind me of those type of IP-based movies from the 2000s, except this one is a lot funnier, and I think the story is a little stronger. And this movie's gonna work really well for a lot of people. There's, I think, a lot of messaging in the film that, to a point, it gets to be a bit much. I was expecting that there'd be a lot of lines that would be pandering to the audience, and just a lot of easy one-liners about current, cultural politics and things like that. And the movie doesn't really do that for a majority of the runtime. There are still lines like that, but not nearly as much as you would expect from a film like this. And I think it's a lot smarter with the way that it builds its story from the beginning. Granted, I do think it kind of fumbled with the messaging towards the end. The movie's still going to work for a lot of people. I think overall it's a very funny movie, and I think that's the thing that's most important. And I think that's the thing that the filmmakers were going for in the end. I don't know what the original intent or screenplay of this movie looked like. It was written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. In the end, they maybe just wanted to make a very comedic movie, and the messaging is still there, but I don't think it's nearly as strong as it could have been, just because in a way, I think they sort of fumbled it at the end. It seemed like they were going to say something really profound, and granted, there's like an extra 10 minutes that, while it ends on a hilarious joke, there's like a weird 10 minutes where it tries to get pretty existential with everything, and it fits the story that occurred earlier in the movie, but I would say that there was a good chunk of the third act before that I thought it was kind of fumbling things in a way. I think they could have said something a little more complex and profound, and I think a lot of movies like this typically don't know how to land it with the third act. The only one that I've really seen do it well is the Lego Movie, which there's a lot of comparisons to be made between this movie and the Lego Movie. In fact, Will Ferrell kind of plays a similar role, except he's not sinister in this one versus the Lego Movie. But I do think that the Lego Movie is one of those rare exceptions where they were able to keep everything together even with the third act and really have a strong, unique, nuanced, sort of profound message. Whereas this one, while it wasn't being too easy with things earlier in the movie, I think it gets a little bit lousy towards the end. There's a big speech that one of the characters make that's going to have a huge impact on people. It had impact on some of the friends that I went and saw it with. I was also thinking, the character who's saying this right now, we haven't really learned much about her experience at all. It can be assumed because living in the real world, you can kind of assume what her experience is. But at the same time, you do need to write a character. And a lot of movies like this fall into that error, where I don't think they're really writing a character as much as they are writing in relation to people's experiences and hoping that people will just assume. If that's the point, then yeah, it did it well, because clearly a lot of people were reacting to it. And this is a good enough movie in the first two acts where it all ends up working. But to me, it just felt like that character was very underwritten. So when we got to that big scene, I felt like I was hearing more of the screenwriter versus the actual character. It's really too bad when the first two acts of the movie are so good that the third act can't land it. That's always a disappointing thing to watch in movies, even when the movie overall is still a good movie. By not landing that third act, I think that's what keeps a great movie from being great. This really could have been one of those great, sort of on the Lego movie, unique types of experiences, a very impossible type of movie. And a lot of ways this movie is impossible for how it turned out, but to me, it's too bad that I felt like it could have even been one of the greatest. There's also this weird thing where when they go into the real world, it's a very cartoonish version of the real world, especially Mattel. And I like the production design of Mattel, and I almost appreciate that it's not entirely like the real world. But at the same time, if you're trying to get this message across about these different characters and the experience of those in the audience, it's maybe a little tougher for that to land when the version of the real world that they're in is not entirely like our real world. But still, the music was great, the soundtrack is awesome, the actors are incredible in it, and that production design, that does not get nominations. I don't know what will win. I don't know what could beat this movie. But perhaps it could be Oppenheimer, because this movie also has very nice production design, and it's nice to see sets that don't feel small. We're actually in a massive classroom, and we're actually at these locations. And again, just like Barbie, it's nice that not everything is shot on a green screen. It's a big budget movie where they actually built the sets. And this does bring back the 1940s and 1950s aesthetic of everything. So for that, yeah, this movie might be the biggest competitor to Barbie in terms of production design. But anyway, let's go on to Oppenheimer, the big historical drama that people have been waiting for Christopher Nolan to release. And Cillian Murphy is finally given the driver's seat in a sense. He gets to be the lead actor in a Christopher Nolan movie. You got Gary Oldman, you got Kenneth Branagh, you got some newcomers like Robert Downey Jr., and a lot of them are even like hardly in the film. Florence Pugh is not in the movie all that much. Emily Blunt isn't in it that much, but they make an impression. They really take advantage of the scenes that they're in, and you can understand that these actors, even if they only got like one quick scene, really want to be a part of this production. Gary Oldman plays Truman, and he only shows up for one scene, and yet he's great in the movie. But of course, the biggest part of the film is Cillian Murphy, and of course he's great. I have always appreciated this actor. I've always wished that he would get more screen time in other Christopher Nolan films. I always thought he didn't get a chance to shine as Scarecrow, even though he was great in that role. He got a little bit more in Inception, but even then that was very much a third or even fourth fiddle of that film compared to all the other actors. It's great to see him finally take the reins as the lead actor. The fact that he's able to sort of make himself look younger when he needs to be and be older when he needs to be. Some of that's the makeup, but also some of that is the performance and the way that he's just got one of those faces. Maybe he's just got that face where he can look both old and young at the same time. So it works. It works when he is meant to be younger and have these scenes with Florence Pugh, who probably in real life is 20 to 25 years younger than Cillian Murphy. And of course, this is about the creation of the atomic bomb. And they add all those complexities in there about the ethics of building this bomb and, you know, why someone like Oppenheimer might have been okay with building it initially, but then after the fact didn't want to continue this work into a hydrogen bomb. And that's really where this whole movie sort of takes off from, Robert Downey Jr.'s character. And I think this is maybe one of his best roles. I would think that Robert Downey Jr. is the biggest supporting actor of this movie. He probably gets the most screen time besides Oppenheimer. We even have scenes where it actually is taken from his point of view, and these scenes are done in black and white. I do kind of wonder if that was necessary just because it didn't end up being too many scenes that were just from his point of view, and I didn't really catch on to what they were doing until we got the second round of Robert Downey Jr. scenes. And then I was like, okay, I understand what they're doing now, and I get why these scenes are black and white. And learning about the process of them trying to get black and white IMAX film is interesting in itself. But I don't know if it ended up being too necessary besides just being a fun, technical achievement for the filmmakers. You know, black and white IMAX film didn't exist before, but I don't know, as a storytelling device, I don't know if it ended up being too necessary. They also jumble scenes around in this movie like they do in a lot of Christopher Nolan movies. That's almost to be expected from him at this point. But I don't know if it was necessary this time around. I really think it would have been better if they would have just told things in a linear style. It is a 3-hour movie. I don't think it ever slowed things down. I was very invested the whole time, especially in that third act. When they started getting closer to finishing the bomb and then the aftermath of that. I found all of that to be the most interesting. And this is a very complex character to try to nail down. You really do feel the complexities, and in a way, I think can relate to him in the sense of why someone might change their mind later about doing something like this and the horrible effects it can have on your psyche. And I don't think it really leaves you with an answer. Like, there isn't some monologue about, well, I built this thing and we needed it at the time, but because I built this thing that can now destroy us, did I also lead us down the path of destruction? There is a line similar to that in the film, but I still think it ends things in a bit of an ambiguous manner. You know, not every single situation is black and white. Well, maybe that's why he wanted to use the black and white scenes for Robert Downey Jr., because that character very much did see everything black and white. Ah, okay, maybe I'm catching on to why he did that now. I would at least say a warning to people that if you're expecting to see a lot of like atomic bomb science in this movie, that's not going to happen. You never see much about the breakthroughs in creating the bomb, and by the time you get to the scene where they ignite it, which is a great moment in the movie, but in a sense, I also was thinking, wow, I don't know if I really felt this long journey to get to this moment. But at the end of the day, the movie is about Oppenheimer and his life. If you wanted to see a movie about them just developing the bomb, well, I guess that would have had to have been a different type of film. It couldn't have been just focused on Oppenheimer. I almost wonder if this could be an argument against not doing everything historically accurate and including absolutely every person that was involved, because it gets to be a bit much to keep up with. And I'm sure people are still going to complain that there's stuff in this that's not historically accurate. So I guess I don't understand like why we had to be so close to what happened, because this movie almost starts to feel like you're just reading a history book. Makes me wonder, if I didn't know as much about Oppenheimer as I did, would there have been things I was kind of lost on? But actually also, if I would read even more about all this, would I appreciate the movie more? But regardless, this is an achievement in filmmaking. And between Barbie and Oppenheimer, I think I'll give the edge to Oppenheimer. I think I would go see this movie again. Oppenheimer just keeps things going, and for being a 3-hour runtime, it doesn't necessarily feel all that long. I do think things still could have been trimmed down. I think some characters maybe didn't need to be included, but still, the movie has a powerful effect. Everybody makes an impact in the movie, and by having all that nuance, that's why I think it is a little better than Barbie. But Barbie is still a lot of fun, one of the funniest movies of this year, and on an emotional level, it is going to work for a lot of people. But that was my Barbenheimer experience. Let me know your experience if you saw both movies on the same day, and we'll see you next time.